So actually for this week and the first part of week 5, we will discuss, or we have to deal with, the inverse functions. Okay. And actually the first topic for this week is all about the one-to-one function. Okay. Hearing the word one-to-one function, any idea about this function? Any idea mga anak for a one-to-one function? So ilan ba sa inyo dito ang meron ng girlfriend, boyfriend? Actually, that is a real life example of a one-to-one function if you are really stick to one. Kumbaga ay, syempre, kapag may boyfriend ka, isa lang talaga. Kapag may girlfriend ka, isa din lang talaga. So meaning, ang isang lalaki can be partner only sa isang babae. And same case for babae to lalaki. Ano po? So hindi tayo pwedeng maging, ang tawag ninyo doon? Two-timer or more pa. Ano? Yan. So yan po yung tinatawag natin na one-to-one function. And napakadaling intindihin. Ano? So these are the objectives. So we have to determine if a function is a one-to-one function. Paano ba natin talaga na-determine? Actually, yung binigay ko sa inyo example is already an example of a one-to-one function. Same case with, mamaya, may encounter discussion on one-to-one. Let us try to examine first the following. Okay. And basically, from here, you can define what a one-to-one function is. So look at this one. We have function f and function g. So as you can see in the slide, function f is said to be a one-to-one function. Since for every value of y, for each one value of y that is used, there is only one value of x. Ano po? So meaning to say, for every one domain, there corresponds a one value of the range. But in the case of function g, okay, there is one value of y which is paired to two of x. So si 4 na pair siya kay h at saka kay a. So meaning to say, this is not a one-to-one function since 4 is being paired to more than once. Yan. Here's another one by which we can define what a one-to-one function is. So this is a graph of a one-to-one function. So it's not always the case that the function, the expression given is a function. There are cases where you need to tell whether a graph is a one-to-one function. And how do we test if it is really a one-to-one function? Okay, so that is actually a horizontal line test. Diba, kung matatandaan niyo last time, we have the horizontal asymptote, the vertical, the oblique. So with the horizontal asymptote, we can test, or the horizontal line test, we can test whether the graph is really a one-to-one function. Okay? But this one, the second graph, is not a one-to-one function. Balik ko lang. Saan na yun? Ayaw na niyang bumalik. Okay. So bakit ba hindi naging one-to-one function ito? Okay. Pavisya, di ba? If you will try to imagine if there is a horizontal line, kagaya ng ginawa natin sa unang graph, yan. Kung maglalagay tayo ng horizontal line test natin, then bringing it down hanggang sa last part, so mapapansin niyo like this one, di ba? Okay. Let's say for example, tumigil dito yung horizontal line test ninyo. Okay? So kung mapapansin niyo, si y na 4 is being paired to two values of x, kay -2 and kay +6. So that what makes this a not a one-to-one function. Okay po? So ganun lang kapag gagamitin natin ng horizontal line test. So again, a graph is a graph of a one-to-one function if it pass the horizontal line test. So that's the function given. Ayun po yung absolute value. Okay. So in terms of, it is a function if every element of the range corresponds to exactly one symbol natin, ha? Siyempre, 1 and then dash 1. So again, if every element of y corresponds to one value of x, then it is a one-to-one function. Okay. Another one, with the case of the graph, a function f is one-to-one if, and only if, the graph y equals f of x passes the horizontal line test. So we have there the horizontal line test you have seen in the two graphs. And another definition that we can give for a one-to-one function is that it is a function, it is a one-to-one function if f of x sub 1 is not equal to f of x sub 2, whenever x sub 1 is not equal to x sub 2. Okay? A function is one-to-one if f of x sub 1 is equal to f of x, the same y value is never paired with two different x values. Look at these examples. F of x is equal to 2x minus 5. Okay, so based from the definition, we have f of x sub 1 is equal to f of x sub 2. So we will try to replace, so from this given function, we will replace the value of x by x sub 1 and the value on the other side, the value of, wait lang po mga anak. Ayan. So again, we try to replace the x by x sub 1, that is on the left side, and x sub 2 on the right side. Okay po. So if we will try to simplify this, then this will make so that's the case of the definition of a one-to-one function. Okay. So another example, to replace the x here by x sub 1, and on the right we will replace it by x sub 2. So squared plus 3 equals x sub 2 squared plus 3. So simply x sub 2 squared. Okay. And that means for us equal to x sub 2. So we need to remove the squared, and by doing that, we need to raise both sides to 1/2 or just get the square root of that. So makikita natin roots, di ba? One positive and the other one is negative. Same case on the right side, square root din siya, kaya may plus or minus sign. So what does it mean? Okay. So this is not an example of a one-to-one function. Okay. So kasi po, itong, let's say for example, yung positive x sub 1 ninyo will be paired with the positive and the negative x sub 2. So same case then with the negative. Ano po? So for us to determine daw po by just merely looking at the given function, if the degree of the function is odd, so just like the first example, the degree of this is 1, okay? 1, 3, 5, or the highest exponent, by just looking at the highest exponent, if it is odd, then it is a one-to-one function. But if the degree of the given function is even, like 2, 4, 6, or whatever, then it is not an example of a one-to-one function. Again, that is merely by looking at the given functions. May question po doon?
Wala.
Let's have these exercises. Okay. You need to tell me whether the given function is a one-to-one or not. First pala, you need to tell me whether it is a function or not a function. Then if it is a function, determine whether it is a one-to-one or not one-to-one. Okay po? So dalawa ang kailangan nating maging sagot. Okay? Anybody for the first example? Yes, Aryan?
Function po and one-to-one.
Okay. So obviously this is a function kasi walang nagdoble. Okay? And then it is a one-to-one function. Why natin? Yeah. So looking at that, okay, so those are the domain, diba? The set of domain natin. So that's why it is a function, and at the same time, no two values of y, or no value of y is being paired to two values of x. So that makes it a one-to-one function. Thank you, Aryan. Yeah. So let's have the second example. Anybody? Seth, are you trying to write something? Okay, let's have VJ. Is this a function or not?
Not a function po.
Okay, not a function. So if it is not a function, yan. Function daw siya, VJ. O, bakit ba siya naging function? Kasi ang
Oo
x
nga po
niya, di ba,
pala.
o magkakaibang x. Yan, it's a one-to-many.
Yes po. Kasi po na doble.
But then, it is not a one-to-one. Yan, because nagdalwa tayo
Excuse me
doon ng
po, many to
y.
one po
So,
dapat. Hindi po one to many.
Wait lang, 2, 1, 0, negative 1. Many to, okay, many not a one-to-one. Yan, because of the 1 being paired to 1 and negative 1. Tama?
Yes.
Ano mga anak? Make a violent reaction, ha? Okay, let's have this example of a one-to-one function. Any other hands, please? Hoy, Miko, hindi ka naman ban sa subject ko, ha? Pag gusto mong sumagot, pwede naman. O yan, tingnan mo, nag-raise na ng hands si Miko. Go, Miko.
Not a function po, ma'am. Gawa po may umulit po.
Why?
The domain -1 is repeated po. It becomes one too many po.
Yeah. Next natin. Yan. So, hindi siya pwede. Kumbaga, one to many ang nangyari natin dito. Ano? Etong kanina sa second example, it can be because it's many to one. But in the case of this, na si X ang nagdoble na ipinair kay Y, so it's not a function. Thank you, Miko. Okay, let's have this one. Anybody? Shankar Tenedero?
Ma'am.
Anak, can I hear your voice? O sige, Lance.
Function po, ma'am. Tas not one-to-one po.
Okay, so it's a function. Parang sa... Yan. So it's not one-to-one. Thank you, Lance. Okay, let's have naman this graph. Is this an example of a one-to-one function or a function first? Jane? Jane Denise Repeal, anak? What can you say about the graph?
Ma'am, function po tapos not one-to-one po.
Function, yes. Not one-to-one. You try to imagine na meron siyang horizontal line test. Ibaba mo yung horizontal line mo. Will there be any point na dalawa yung magiging sa value ng y? Yung value ng y na magkakaroon ng dalawang values ng x, anak? Jane? Wala na si Jane. And pumapasok, may mga humahabol pa. And it's a one-to-one function. Kasi sabi ko nga sa inyo kanina, so try to imagine or try to place a horizontal line test. So whether you will have a horizontal line on the upper part of the graph, still for every one value of y, na-pair siya sa one value of x. So same case if you will have another horizontal line on the lower part of the graph, again, it's a one-to-one function. Okay po. Okay. Let's have the next slide. So for the real life examples, just press thumbs up. May thumbs up emoji ba kayo dyan sa inyong ano? And then thumbs down if it is not a real life example. And the relation pairing of a student and his or her LRN. Is this a real life example of a one-to-one function? Thumbs up or thumbs down? Chris Daniel Quaresma. Ano to, anak?
Thumbs down.
Thumbs down? Why thumbs down, anak? Thumbs down if it is not an example of a one-to-one, ha? Thumbs up if it is. Ruel? Up or down? So this is an example of a one-to-one function. Di ba wala namang estudyante na may parehas na LRN? So for every L, so that's why this is an example of a one-to-one function. Okay? How about this one? The relation pairing of an SSS member. So it's the same case with our first example. It is a one-to-one function pa rin. Hindi pwede mag-double to a person. BJ again. Thumbs up or down, anak? BJ.
Ma'am, thumbs up.
Thumbs up. Drew. Ay, kapapasok pa lang pala ni Drew. Okay, so this is not, yes, thumbs down. Yan. Why? Kasi di ba may mga Filipinos na nagkakaroon sila ng dual citizenship? Yung mga pinanganak halimbawa sa abroad, di ba? Nagdadalwa sila ng citizenship. So it's not a one-to-one function. So thank you. Fahrenheit, it's equivalent degrees Celsius measurement. Is this an example of a one-to-one? Yes, it is. Diba? So wala namang nagdodobleng value. For every one value in degree Fahrenheit, it corresponds to one value. May corresponding value siya sa Celsius. Diba? Why you see, that's the reason why we use the to his, her, or her grade. Up or down? Yes, Wilson? What's your answer, Wilson?
Thumbs down po.
Okay, that's correct. Let's say, for example, sa 90 na grade, so there are a lot of students na may 90. So that's why it's not an example of a one-to-one. Okay, let's have the last one. SIM card to its cell phone. Thank you, Wilson. SIM card to its cell phone number. Yes, of course. Ayan. Shelo, sinabi ko na. Later ka na lang ulit sumagot, anak. So it's a one-to-one function. Diba? Those are the real and life examples of a one-to-one function. Now let's proceed with the second lesson, which the title of the module for this week is all about inverse functions. So kung makikita niyo yung lesson. We need to determine the inverse of a one-to-one function and then write a letter to a family. Siguro yung second one, we cannot achieve this one at this moment. But then at some point, I mean the inverse of a one-to-one function. Okay. Let's try first to categorize the given functions. So how will you categorize QF for quadratic function or RF for rational function? Shelo, anak, you want to answer? Shelo?
Yes po, ma'am.
Sige, anak. How will you classify the first function? LF, QF, or RF? Then try to
The
tell us
first
whether
one
it's
po
one-to-one
is
or
linear
many-to-one.
function. And it is
Okay, that's
one-to-one
correct.
po kasi po yung exponent is odd.
Yan. It is a one-to-one. Kasi for everyone, fellow. Let's have the second one. Yes, Lance?
Ma'am, ano po? It's a quadratic function and ano po, many to one.
Yan. It's QF and it's many-to-one. Since squared siya, di ba? Ano, Lance? So, ibig sabihin,
Yes, ma'am.
magkakaroon ng one. And then, let's have the third one. Anybody for the third one? For the third example? Mananawag na ba ako? I-unmute ko ng mic nyo, ha? Ayan, Miss Carniema. Anak. Si Diego na lang. Diego, how will you classify the third one?
I think rational function.
Rational function. Why rational function?
May ano po, may fraction.
May fraction. Francica, what's your idea with the third function? Do you agree with Neil's answer that this is a rational function?
Ma'am, I think it is quadratic function.
It's a quadratic function. What made you decide that this is a quadratic function?
Quantity x minus 1 po is
Yeah.
squared.
Okay, thank you, Franz. Because of the exponent, 1/2 ay rational function na siya. So remember with this expression, you need to square this. And since the degree is 2, then again, it's a many-to-one. Yan. Neil, 5 na ba dito yung sagot mo kanina na rational function?
Yes po, ma'am.
Yan. With the fourth example of function, that is a rational one function pa rin. Okay, 1-to-1. And then the last one, yes, Sofia Fernandez?
Ma'am, try lang po. Linear
Sige,
function po. 1 to
Okay. Why linear? Because the degree is, thank you. And now that you know how to classify a function words, okay, paano daw hinahanap? And how do we define that? Sabi sa atin, let f be a one-to-one function or be a one-to-one with domain A and range B. Then the inverse of f denoted by f of -1, so that's the notation for the inverse of a given function if it is one-to-one, is a function with domain B and range A defined by f of -1 of y is equal to x if and only if f of x is equal to y for any y in B. So in short, okay, kapag daw po ang function ay one-to-one at yung domain niya ay si A at saka ang range niya ay si B, then yung inverse daw niya ay magkakaroon ng domain na B at range na A. Ibig sabihin, the domain and the range of the original function, i-reverse nyo siya for the domain and the range of the inverse function. Okay? So, ganun lang daw po yung pagkuha ng domain and range nun. Okay? And as we say, a function has an inverse if and only if it is one-to-one. Again, you can only find the inverse of a given function if the function is one-to-one. And that is the importance of the first part of the discussion. You need to clearly see how to determine whether a function is a one-to-one or not. Kasi from that, you can easily find its inverse na. Ano po? Because because if it is not a one-to-one function, then it has no inverse. So here are the steps in finding the inverse of a one-to-one function. First, you need to write the f of x symbol to y. And then after doing that, you need to interchange the variables x and y. So di ba ang x usually yun yung nasa right side, si y nasa left. So pagpapalitin nyo sila ng position. And not necessarily pagpapalitin sa pag-right lang. Ano? Yan. Then you need to solve for y in terms of example. Find the inverse. Sabi nga nasa atin sa first step, you need to write x here by y. And in doing that, we have y equals to 3x plus 1 to interchange y and x. So, sinasabi ko po sa inyo that interchanging doesn't mean that you need to transpose the 3x on the left notation. So, since si y solo dito, so ipapalit lang natin ito po. And from here, we need to solve for the value of solo si y. Okay po. So, kapag gagawin natin, si parallel x minus 1 equals to 3y. And then, syempre si y may kasamang 3. So, we need to divide what si ano po. So, that's the purpose of doing that. Then we have, bakit ganyan? So, napapunta. Yung value ng y, inverse function niya. Sabi natin, if the degree is so, yung inverse na po niya, yan, we will replace that. Okay, so that's the simplest way of finding the inverse of a given function. And you can check whether the solved inverse function is a correct inverse function. Paano natin siya from the original one? Di ba, pagka sinubstitute na natin, this is for checking lang ha. Di ba, maging f of x equals, yan, replace the x by the value of your inverse function. So, i-replace natin siya, x minus 1 over 3 plus 1. Sorry sa sulat yan. Pag sinimplify na natin, we can cancel the 3. Ang matitira na lang natin doon is x minus 1 plus 1. Okay po. Simplify din natin. Yan, makakancel yung 1 and negative 1. Then, ang matitira ninyo, f of x is equal to x. If that will be the case, then the inverse function is correct. Ano po? So that's how we check if in case the solved inverse function is correct. Question for this example. Wala, mga anak.
Ma'am, pwede po bang
Tayo.
sa checking
Ano, anak?
po? Kung pwede pong sa checking po nung sa inverse po ay yung f of x po, ang isa-substitute po ay f of raised to negative 1 of x equals to x po sa...
Lang, 3x lang yung lalabas.
So, bali pwede po dun na ganun po mag-check po, ma'am.
Pwede rin, kaya lang, ang sinecheck kasi nga natin dito is kung tama. Same case din naman. Ayun.
Okay.
Kaya lang, what if, di ba there are cases naman na tinatry natin na at the end mag-equal to x na lang siya kahit nan ba sa solving, parang ganun ba? Ano, since we are trying to check yung hinanap natin, we need to make use of the original function, not the solved one.
Okay.
Nakuha niyo ako?
Yes po, ma'am.
Ayun.
Thank you po.
Okay, let's have the second one. Okay. So second example is this.
1-to-1 po.
Yan, 1-to-1 because the degree is add 3, di ba? And if you like to rewrite the g of x kay y, replace g of x to y, and then interchange the x and y. Then solve for y, ita-transpose in negative 2. Yan. Thus, we have for the inverse of g of x, we have g of negative 1 of x is equal to the cube root of x plus 2. Okay po? Question. Dali lang ano? Okay, how about this one? This is an example of a rational function. What's the degree of the rational? Okay, so we can still find the inverse of this. So doing the same procedures, and replace the f of x by y, then change the y here on the left by x, change the x by y, and then solve for y just to remove this kay x. So we have this one, and then try to distribute the x kay 3y minus 4, and you'll have this one. And then, what else? Combine natin yung may dalawang y, yung wala, ililipat sa kabilang side. And then, common monomial factor here is y. So we will have y times the quantity 3x minus 2 equals to 4x plus 1. Therefore, the inverse of the given function is this one. Ano po? F of negative 1 of x is equal to 4x plus 1 over 3x minus 2. Actually, as you go on with the different one-to-one functions na hanapin ninyo inverse, may makukuha kayong technique pag magsosolve kayo ng ganyan. Okay? So hindi ko na lang sasabihin, basta inyo na lang na, ang tawag doon, i-discover. May question po tayo dito sa 2 more examples natin. Okay, let's proceed with this one. How about this one? Does the inverse of the function exist?
Hindi po, ma'am.
Why?
Because quadratic po, it's not one-to-one po, it's many-to-one.
Yan. So since it's a quadratic function, the degree is 2, the degree is even, then the one-to-one or the inverse of that does not exist. Ano po? So ganun lang po kadali yun ha. Pag, sana ganyan lagi ang bigay ni ma'am, ano? Sana laging quadratic. Okay, how about this one? The degree of this is 1, pero does its
Hindi po,
inverse hindi, 'di ba? Bakit? Kasi 'di ba pag sinabi natin absolute value, there are 2 values for that, the positive and negative, because if you will find both the absolute value of a positive and a negative number, parehas pa rin siya na positive function does not exist. Okay po? Now, how do we represent inverse function? This is the 3rd lesson for this week. So these are the objectives. Again, it's the same na ginawa natin sa rational function. Nag-table of values tayo, then ginagraph. So again, you can use Desmos or, ang tawag natin doon sa isa, GeoGebra for the graphing part. Okay, so as said here on this slide, so in using table of values of the function, first we need to ascertain that the given function is a one-to-one function wherein no x values are being repeated. So ibig sabihin, isa lang na isa yung value ng x na isa-substitute natin. Then it is represented as the x values of the function resulted as the y values of its inverse. And the y values of the function are the x values of its inverse. So parang yung kaninang sinabi natin sa definition that the domain of the original function will be the range of the inverse of the function. And the range of the original function will be the domain of the inverse function. Then given the graph of a one-to-one function, the graph of its inverse can be obtained by reflecting the graph about the y equals x. Tignan natin. Yan. Di ba kanina we tried to solve for natin. Ano po? Okay. Ngayon sa table of values, okay, ang hahanapin po ninyo ay table of values for the original function, not for its inverse. Ha? Domain, the table of values for the original function. So ito po yun. If we will substitute negative 2 dito, so we'll have negative 6 plus 1, kaya negative 5 siya. Negative 1 times 3 is negative 3 plus 1 is negative 2. Natin yan. So these are the values of x and y for the original function. Then in the case of representing the table of values for its inverse, then it will be like this of values for the inverse ha. Hindi tayo nag-solve for the inverse para sa table of values. Yung pinapakita ko ulit, ito siya. For the table of values ng inyong inverse, itong lahat ng nasa baba, itong lahat ng nasa baba, ang siyang magiging domain ng inyong inverse function. Ibig sabihin, magpapalit sila ng position. Okay? Kita nyo? Tingnan ninyo dun sa next slide natin. Yan. So, naging ganito na siya. Ano po? So, the table of value of its inverse can be found first by having table of values from the original function and then reversing the values of the domain and the range, and that will be the table of values for your inverse function. Maliwanag po tayo doon, mga anak.
Opo, ma'am.
Okay. For its graph naman, ayan po siya. So, ni-reflect equals x na graph natin. Ano po? Di ba yung kanina ay ang sabi 2? Nasaan yung negative 5? Ito po siya, negative 5. Yan, negative 2, pero hindi siya magre-reflect dito. This is actually the graph of 3x plus 1. Yun na ba yung original function natin given? Ano mga anak? Yun na po yun. Then let's have the domain and range of its inverse function. Last topic na yata ito. Yan. So since you know how to find it'll be easier now for you to find the domain and the range, because the domain and the range are actually the values of your f of f of -1 of x, and then the y. Yan. So ito lang po yung domain ng given function will be the range of its inverse, while the range of the original function will be the domain of its inverse. So x plus 1, this is the way we solve for its inverse. Tapos ito yung table of values na nakuha natin. Ito yung magiging table of values for its inverse function. Then from here, may mga lumalabas na values ng y. Diba, the domain of the inverse function is the set of all x's. So, ganun din kay y. Okay po. So, ano ang form ito? The set g of x is equal to the square root of x plus 5. Okay? Plus 5. Then, okay, this is the domain of your b must be greater than or equal to -5. Diba? From -5, -4, -3 up to infinity, yun lang yung pwede maging values niya. Hindi pwede tayo make it log ng the original function. So, kung yan yung sa original, then for its inverse, the set of all x, the set of all x's such to 0. While its range will be the set of all set of element of the real numbers, and that y must be greater than or equal to -5. Okay po? So, hindi na ako naglagay ng table of values. Ano po, pero pagka kayo pagsasolvin, from the table of values, you can easily look for its domain and range, or the set of domain and range. So, for your learning task number 3, so ito po yung isa sa mga requirements ko for this week. Yan. So, remember that our subject is general mathematics. So, hindi ko po tinatanggap kapag walang solution, na diretso lang yung magiging sagot ninyo. Ano, mga anak? So, you need to show all the solution, and then try to complete this table for the 5 numbers. Yan. You need first to find the inverse range of the inverse function, not the original, ha? Mga anak. Yan. So 5 numbers po yun for your first output for week number 4. And then the second output over and completely. Ito yung Learning HLP. So yan lang daw yan pong dalawang yan lang ang aking requirement. Pakilagay na lang po sa inyong drive lahat na magiging sagot ninyo for learning task 3 and outputs for week 3 or even weeks 1 to 3, not only in my subject but in all your subjects. Then please, ano po, para hindi kayo madamihan,